Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider presented by FanDuel. Matthew Coller here, and we are continuing predictions week here on the show. So I have 5 more predictions, and I need listener participation here on the show. I want you to grade each one of these predictions. I will show it to you, I'll explain it, I'll run down every bit of my reasoning, and then you can tell me, hey man, I love that prediction, and it's a thumbs up or thumbs down. So give me the A through F if you want. Give me the thumbs up, thumbs down if you want. Whatever grading system you like, jump in the comments and grade the predictions. And then the rest of the show is up to you guys. If you want to make predictions, ask questions, talk football, whatever's on your mind, I am here to do so. And I love these summer shows where we get into a lot of fascinating discussions along the way. And then the other night, if you made it all the way to the end of the show and you saw me completely botch a build a player, we're going to try again. We're going to give it another shot. So that will be later in the show before we hang it up for tonight. But why don't we dive right in to the predictions? We're going to start out. I wrote them in order, and then I am going out of order because I like this one the most and I want to talk about it the most because I don't think that we've spent a ton of time discussing what we expect out of Caleb Banks, which is a pretty darn big deal. So the first prediction for the night is going to be this. Caleb Banks, Vikings first-round defensive tackle, will play 480 snaps, pick up 4.0 sacks, and have a 62.0 PFF grade, give or take a point or two on the PFF grade. So let me explain each part of that. You guys grade the prediction. If you want to grade it on how much you like it for the Vikings, or if you want to grade it on its accuracy, you think it's going to happen, you think it's not going to happen, you don't think it's bold enough, or whatever it might be, explain your grade. So here, I'll explain mine. With Caleb Banks, I think when you draft a guy this high, and it's presented as it's a boomer bust, it's a guy that's going to potentially come in and set the world on fire, and look at his highlight reel and everything else. And we think, well, man, I mean, if he's replacing Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, this dude should be playing like 1,000 snaps right away. Get in there, Caleb Banks. Change the world with your giant body. But that's not quite fair to Mr. Banks, or is it fair to rookie defensive tackles in general? So I was looking this up, and only a handful of rookie defensive tackles last year even made it to 500 snaps, because this has really become a rotation world in the NFL along defensive lines. So it is much rarer that we see a guy just playing at the defensive tackle position 1,000 snaps, even 800 snaps. What we see much more is trying to keep these guys fresh. And I think that Philadelphia Eagles 2017 team that won the Super Bowl, and I don't mean to, rip off a Band-Aid there for Vikings fans, but I think that they had some concepts that really changed the way a lot of people did things in the NFL. And one of them obviously was going for it on fourth down, that there was a clear ripple effect. But another one was that defensive line had a really deep rotation that they used. And since then, I feel like teams have more and more leaned into, we're not going to play our guys every single snap and wear them down now that there's 17 games, by week 17. Instead, we're going to have 4 dudes at defensive tackle that we're working in, or 5 dudes that we're working in with different combinations, different skill sets. Not that it's a brand new concept and they invented it. Nose tackles didn't always rush the passer on 3rd down and 12 or something, but really emphasizing that. So last year, there weren't many rookies who made it to 500 snaps. And I think that he will hover around that area of 500 snaps. But when we talked to Brian Flores right after Caleb Banks was drafted, one of the things that he talked about is trying to put Banks early on his career into these advantageous situations. So just for example, like a 2nd down and 13. All right, this is a pass rushing situation. Caleb Banks, you're on the field and you're going to be in the 4-eye position, which is kind of inside the tackle and outside of the guard. and you're just going to rush the passer from that position, or you're going to slam into the tackle so Dallas Turner can loop around you or something like that, because we're pretty darn sure on 2nd and 13 that they're going to pass. Now, that doesn't mean I think they'll keep him away from 1st and 10. It's just that's a situation every player would dream of being in on the defensive line. Give me 2nd and 13, 3rd and long all day long so I could just rush the passer. And I think they'll mix and match under different circumstances of matchups that he's getting. Maybe if there's someone who is a big guard that's having success against him, you're going to dial it back a little bit. If he's demolishing a smaller guard, well, you're going to lean into it a little bit. And I think at the end of the day, it will hover around that 500 snap mark. And that is the best way to get Caleb Banks acclimated into the NFL, that you have to play him enough where he's going to get development time, and you're going to want to deal with some of the ups and downs, because he's got to make mistakes. He's got to learn from mistakes. For a defensive tackle, the best way to learn is out there against offensive guards. We talk about developing some other positions sometimes, like quarterback, that can be more advantageous off the field for development. I don't think that's the case for defensive tackle. I think DT needs to be out there, wrecking dudes, taking punches in the mouth themselves, and learning on the fly of what works and what doesn't. But I don't think that they're going to throw him so much into the deep end of the pool that Caleb Banks is going to struggle, right? I think that they're going to try to protect him a little bit with the certain circumstances that they're using him. And at the end of the day, 500 snaps seemed about right to me. And in terms of the sack production, I do expect Caleb Banks to get in the backfield and make some plays, because when you watch his college tape, there are quite a few times where he just throws somebody and he is in the backfield in an instant. And I think that that's going to happen a lot, especially with the way that Brian Flores is likely to set this thing up, that there will be situations where he can isolate him. And when you think about what happened last year in the way that Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen emerged in the second half of the season and played better, I think that a lot of that was putting 3 defensive tackles on the field at once and 2 outside linebackers and trying to get those guys one-on-one matchups. Well, if Caleb Banks gets a fair number of one-on-one matchups, he's going to win some of them and he's going to get some sacks. But I don't expect that right away he's going to get 13 sacks and just suddenly be, the next JJ Watt or something, or, the next Hakeem Hicks, that he's just going to blow the world away, because this is a player that needs development time. I don't think he's completely so raw as a project that you can't have him out there or that he's going to get 0 sacks. But I think that this is something that's going to take a while for him to build kind of a bag of different pass rush moves, to understand how offensive guards operate in the NFL. And you can throw some of them, but you can't throw all of them, right? So he's going to have to learn which ones you have to focus on technique. And then a big part of it too, which I believe Flores talked about this, which is identifying things in the backfield, or maybe this was Cody Alexander when I had him on the show. I think that's what it was, defensive guru. He said that one of the biggest things for defensive tackles is just being able to identify stuff, like to learn to read and react. So if you see certain formations and certain situations that you prepared for on tape, you can play faster at defensive tackle. It's a very high IQ position. I remember Rick Spielman saying that IQ was huge for them for a defensive tackle, and Linval Joseph, very, very intelligent player. So that's going to be big for Caleb Banks in the learning process. So that's why I went with 4, because I thought it's a fair number between he's going to make some impact and he's going to get to the backfield, but I don't think he's quite there yet to get 8, 9, 10 sacks. That is his potential, maybe down the road if he hits the absolute ceiling of what he can become. But in terms of trying to predict it, I'm shooting more for the middle with a lot of these predictions than trying to hit the massive home runs, which maybe makes them a little less sexy than some other predictions, I guess. But in terms of the PFF grade, this was one where I also did some research on, well, what do young defensive tackles usually grade? And the only one that was higher than 65 last year was Mason Graham of the Cleveland Browns, who was a top 5 draft pick. And I think it's because there is such a difference between college football, where it's really me versus you. If I'm more physically gifted than you, I'm going to win most of the time. In the NFL, a lot of it is intelligence. A lot of it is technique. And you're facing players who are just much stronger. It's not going to be any NFL guards first time ever facing off with a guy that's 6'5", 6'6", and 330 pounds. Like, they face those guys not every week, but 5 times a year. So there's experience level there. There's game planning level that's going to a way deeper analysis of a player than it would happen in college. So, I think there's going to be an adjustment there, but I also think that the high end plays are going to be so noticeable for Caleb Banks that he will get a lot of those big pluses from PFF and end up with a fairly decent grade. And so I was looking, and then I'll infuse the FanDuel question of the day into this. So Caleb Banks' chances on FanDuel or his odds to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, he's plus 7,500 to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. And around the same level as him are players like Avion Terrell, R. Mason Thomas, Traden Stukes, players like that, Colton Hood. So guys that you've heard of in the draft, but nowhere really near the top. The top is David Bailey at plus 500, and then Ruben Bain at plus 550, Arvell Reese at plus 800. So how about this for a FanDuel question of the day? If Caleb Banks outperformed my prediction, then was really good and won Defensive Rookie of the Year, how good is the Vikings defense? Like, where do you think the Vikings defense would rank if they got the best possible performance out of Caleb Banks and he won Rookie of the Year? So that's your FanDuel question of the day. Well, I can answer it myself, which is, I think if that happens, you are talking about the Vikings being in the conversation for one of the best top 5 for sure, maybe top 7 at worst defenses in the league, because to me, so much hinges on this guy. And Dominique Orange as well, but the young players that are going to be thrown into the lineup right off the bat, if they form at a high level, then everything else falls into place. We saw that at the second half of last year when they could dominate along the defensive line with their pass rush, everything else fell right into place. So that would be my answer, would be they're a top 5 defense, lock it in, if Caleb Banks outperforms this and is in the conversation for Defensive Rookie of the Year. All right, let me get to some other predictions. So grade that one. Do you like it? Do you think it's fair? Do you think I'd like to see more than that? If Caleb Banks performed that way, in my opinion, that would be an excellent rookie season for him. Arrow would be up. He would be a guy that you would be betting on for the future. If he performs under this, we're still going to have a lot of questions, but it doesn't mean that it's like over. Defensive tackles do need a couple years usually before they hit the ground running in the NFL in terms of their development curve, at least 2, sometimes 3 before they start to peak. But I think that this is fair. If he goes over it, then his ascension to superstardom is possible. And if he goes under, I'll probably say, look, there's no reason to panic just yet because these guys need a couple of seasons. Just 2 years ago, there were a lot of folks going, where is Dallas Turner? Is he even going to play? Is he a bust? And this year, we're going to see him start. And they traded Jonathan Grenard to put him in. So a lot of development time is sometimes needed. Okay, let's get to some other predictions, and I'll read your grades shortly. Next one is Jordan Addison. I am going to project a good season for Jordan Addison, but not an astounding season for Jordan Addison. So I'm going with 57 catches for 789 yards, and I will predict that with this performance, the Vikings will decide to let things play out on his 5th-year option rather than giving him a mega extension. And here's my thought on this, that with Kyler Murray at quarterback, he has historically leaned very heavily on his number 1 wide receiving target. And I just saw an interview with Trey McBride where he was asked about Kyler Murray, and he was asked about Kyler Murray's video games, and he said, I don't really think that was a thing. But take it from him, I guess. And he praised Kyler Murray, and he also said that he thought that he was going to do really well in Minnesota. You can watch that interview, Bussin' with the Boys, but I thought that was some interesting comments about Kyler and sort of brushing off this narrative about him. But one narrative that is true about Kyler is that he leans heavy on his top target. And Trey McBride should never say anything bad about Kyler Murray because he emerged as a superstar in the NFL because Murray pushed the ball to him a lot. And the same was with DeAndre Hopkins. When DeAndre Hopkins was asked about Murray, he had extremely nice things to say about Kyler because, well, in part, he pushed the ball to him a lot. So I think that there's going to be a lot of footballs going to Justin Jefferson. I think there's going to be a lot of footballs going to TJ Hawkinson. But I also read a stat today on Twitter, and I cannot remember who tweeted this out, but the number of passing games over 250 yards has declined significantly over the years. Was it Nate Tice? I think Nate Tice was the one who tweeted out or shared the stat that, the passing has gone down in its volume. And one reason is because of scrambling quarterbacks. Another reason is the average start position. And another reason is that teams are kicking field goals. And when you feel like you can kick a 60-yard field goal anytime, teams will get to the 35-yard line and kind of be like, how aggressive do we want to be? Now, we know O'Connell likes to be aggressive, but hey, we've got points on the board at the 35-yard line, so let's just make sure we get those points. And the number of plays are down a bit. The number of yards are down a bit. So I'm not going over the top with a number 2 wide receiver when I think the number 1 wide receiver is going to get an exceptional amount of the target share. So this would be a good season for Jordan Addison, but I think that if you get 57 catches for 789 yards, and then you go ask for $30 million a year, it's going to be really hard for the Vikings to do that. His 5th-year option is relatively inexpensive. I think overthecap.com estimated $18 million. Someone could correct me if there's a different number out there, but it's not a cajillion dollars. So they could let him play that out, and that could get ugly in training camp in 2028. I don't know, but I don't know if also that you can make that bet based on a very good season, but a season in the shadow of Justin Jefferson, if Jordan Addison ultimately will want huge amounts of dollars for that. So that is my prediction, a mild season that is still good, but not unbelievable for Jordan Addison. Feel free to grade that prediction as well. Okay, that one was number 15. I read number 12 to start. Sorry, they're out of order. Number 14 is Jawan Jennings, a prediction for Jawan Jennings. I'm going to go with this. 43 receptions for 487 yards. And I'm also going to predict that Ty Felton gets a decent amount of playing time. Decent means what? Maybe 400 snaps, a handful of targets, and does pretty well. And he ends up contributing 19 receptions and sets himself up for potentially having the wide receiver 3 role in the future. And here I'll explain that. I mean, Jawan Jennings has been extremely productive over the last 2 years with San Francisco, but a main reason is that there have been a lot of injuries in San Francisco. And when Jawan Jennings, I'll pull this up, when Jawan Jennings was more of a number 3 wide receiver, his production was about in this area. So if we go back to 2022, for example, when he was more of a wide receiver 3, he caught 35 passes for 416 yards. I mean, I think he's a little bit better than that, and it's going to be an offense that does emphasize some underneath passing to somebody like Jawan Jennings. But I also don't think, unless there's 2 injuries on this team, and one of them is Justin Jefferson, that you're going to see Jennings push that 60, 70, 80 reception type of season. I think he'll be very valuable, but from a fantasy perspective, from predicting numbers perspective, I think that it could be almost like Jarius Wright in the fact that the catch numbers are not crazy, but the impact of the receptions, third downs, red zone could be very, very important. And then, of course, on the field for a lot of running plays. But again, with a lower volume potential passing game this year than it was, say, back in 2022 with Kirk Cousins, where he's throwing 1 million passes, I think that the numbers are going to be a little more in the middle than through the roof, even if, Kyler Murray, presuming it's him, is going to find these guys underneath it. And with Felton, I know it was only mini camp, so I don't want to make too much of it. I always tell you guys, don't make too much of it. I've had friends of mine send me around the league Like, yeah, this is a report that a fifth, round linebacker shined in minicamp. And I think, boy, you'd have to be, how would you know that? How would you even know that? A linebacker, he can't even hit anybody. But wide receiver is the one position through the years that we have gotten a little bit of a beat on whether someone is going to emerge. And Ty Felton looked very good in minicamp. And last year, just, we had heard that they were happy with his progress behind the scenes, but no receivers got injured. So he never really got a chance to get in and show some of that. And I definitely heard from teammates that they loved the effort that he put in for on special teams, just sort of showing his showing his physical nature. So I think Felton is going to get a chance. And I also think there's a decent shot that, someone like Jennings, who plays as physical as he does, will get banged up from time to time. He plays through injuries and stuff like that, but sometimes guys who play with that edge miss some games. So I'll say Jennings has a solid year for the Vikings, and Ty Felton is somebody that we're talking about around this time next year. That's 14th prediction if you're keeping the order of them. So grade that one. Do you like that? Are you buying some Ty Felton stock, or are you thinking, I don't know about that? All right, next one is about the offensive line. Now, this is going to be maybe the boldest prediction that I will make, but I'm buying it. I'm just buying it. The Vikings offensive line this year. I can't predict injuries. Neither can anyone else. It's hard enough to project just receivers who have all sorts of catch numbers that we can look at, or quarterbacks or whatever else. Trying to predict offensive line's ankles and wrists and knees and everything is almost impossible. But I will say this. The starting group of the offensive line, I think, has a chance to be one of the best in the NFL. So here is the prediction. The Vikings offensive line will play together 70% of the games, and they will rank in the top 7 by PFF at the end of the year. Blake Brandel will be considered a solid option at center going forward, and Donovan Jackson will be a top 15 guard. The reasoning for each one of these things, one is that Christian Darrisaw is much healthier. Will Fries, although he played every game last year, is healthy. Blake Brandel has a great track record of remaining healthy throughout his career. He played 17 games in 2024, and then he may have been banged up at one time last year when he was playing center, but other than that, he's got a really good track record. Donovan Jackson played through a lot of stuff. Brian O'Neill has historically found ways to be on the field and fought until the very end. So I think that there's a chance that based on their track records, as long as Darrisaw is good to go, that they can play together quite a bit. Brandel being a solid center, maybe on the bold side, but I think that last year, you can't take away the first 2 games he had to play, but imagine you've never snapped a ball before in a game, and they're like, okay, the first 2 teams you're going to face are Philly and Cleveland, not in that order. Cleveland is a nightmare defensive line. They're fantastic, and they had Mason Graham, and they had Malik Collins, and you have to give a lot of attention to Myles Garrett, and like, oh my gosh, right? And then you face Philly and probably the most talented player in the entire NFL right over the top of you in Jalen Carter. The rest of the way, Blake Brandel was pretty solid. So I have medium expectations for him to be a top 17 to 20 center in the NFL, which is manageable. And then with Donovan Jackson, I was just really, really impressed with him. I think that with Jackson, the PFF grades don't tell the story completely, in part because he had come back from an injury too early, but also because rookie guards often get whooped in the NFL. And last year's draft class with Gray Zabel and Donovan Jackson was just really excellent. And Jackson being a solid mid-tier center or a mid-tier guard last year, I think projects really well for the future. He's a great athlete. He is a very high intelligence player. He's got a mean streak, a fighter streak to him. There's a lot about Jackson that I really like. So if you get your average Brian O'Neill performance, let's say Will Fries is still, for his price tag, a little disappointing, but okay, solid. Brandel is a little below average. Jackson excels, and Christian Darrisaw is 80% of what he had been in the past at his absolute peak. You have yourself probably the 7th best offensive line. And then I should have added too that the depth is better at the tackle position, which will probably end up factoring in at some point with Ryan Vandermark and Caleb Tiernan being guys that are more talented than what they had before. So buying the offensive line, I mean, that is bold. That is bold. And hopefully Guard Guy is listening and has a take on that. So grade that one. Are you guys buying the offensive line or are you skeptical? And explain your takes there. And the fifth of my projections is this. This might be the boldest one. I'm going for it. I'm going for it with Harrison Smith returning in week 10. That's the prediction I'm going for here, that Harrison Smith through the summer, I don't know, gonna keep playing golf, gonna keep being a dad, but then the Vikings will get off to a decent start. They'll be 6-3. They'll be ready to take on some of the toughest games that they're gonna face. What are they? Is Buffalo week 9? Let's say they get a big win. I think it is. Against Buffalo on Monday Night Football, and Harrison Smith says we can win the Super Bowl. I am coming back. And I guess baked into this would be that maybe the safety position is a little banged up or whatever else, that Harry cannot stay away, especially if the Minnesota Vikings have a chance to go down the stretch. His body can't give him 17, but it sure as heck can give him 7 in a playoff run. So that's what I'm going to predict. Until we hear that Harry is retiring, there's always a chance that he comes back. So let's get into your grades for the predictions. I think if that were to happen in that scenario, it could be one of the more fun things we've ever seen with this team, of him coming back and trying to take a shot at it down the stretch. And any opportunity for the fans to celebrate Harrison Smith, for us to watch him play football more, is something that, I had to throw it out there, because if I get it right, that would be a great one. And yes, we will revisit all these at some point during the season. And tomorrow night, I'm going to unveil the top 10, the predictions. So far we did, if you didn't see it the other day, number 20 through 16, this is 15 through number 11, and then 10 predictions for you guys to grade tomorrow night. So why don't we jump in, and anything else that's on your mind is open too. Like, this is a very wide open show. So if you have other questions, you don't have to just address these 5 predictions. There's other things going on in the NFL that you might want to talk about. So why don't we get into it? All right. Where is it? There we go. So let me scroll back to the top there. Okay, we'll start with with Julian, and something that, I'm trying to stay away from and not touch with a 50-foot pole, to tell you the truth, which is Julian says, what's up with Kevin O'Connell and Diana Rossini getting out of a ticket because of texting him or something like that? Have you heard anything? Well, I read the story and then the follow-up, and in the story, she had said on a podcast that she had been pulled over and had gotten out of it by calling an NFL head coach that was the favorite team of the officer. And then it turned out, so the New York Times ran that story, I guess, without checking on that. And then it turned out from the body cam footage that she did not actually call the head coach, which turned out to be Kevin O'Connell. So the exchange went something like, I think she was in New Jersey, and she asked the officer if he was a Jets or a Giants fan. He said Vikings. How about that? Hey, if the guy listens to the podcast, shout out to you, sir. Thank you for listening to the show. But anyway, so, I mean, I'm sure that, the officer was like, wait a minute, I did, that's not what happened. So she did not call Kevin O'Connell. I guess she just told the officer that she had been texting Kevin O'Connell, and then said that JJ McCarthy was bad. And that's kind of the end of that. And yeah, I mean, like, it's not uncommon for NFL insiders to text coaches. Like, that happens pretty commonly around the NFL. And the ins and outs of that, she did more than text certain coaches, I guess. But the NFL insiders, like, that's a lot of the way that they get their information. And that's what they do, is they ask people inside the game, whether it's coaches, general managers, and whoever. So that was her job when she was with The Athletic before the whole Mike Vrabel thing. And it's not shocking that if she was writing about or talking about the Vikings and she wanted intel on whatever it might be, that she would text the head coach of the Vikings. So that's not an uncommon thing, but it's certainly weird to bring up in a traffic stop. I was pulled over once for being on the phone, and the officer said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And I said, "I was on the phone." And he said, "Yes, you were." And that was how that exchange went. I didn't say, do you know that I have Adam Thielen's phone number. I can like give it. I could call him right now. Like this is an odd thing to do, but that whole story is odd. So I'm just gonna slide on right past. I saw people making a big thing out of it or whatever. Her saying that McCarthy's not good. I mean, I guess if you're trying to stretch and say, well, I guess that's what they must have been talking about since she brought it up. Well, also not a shocker since the way things went last year at the quarterback position, but I don't think it has anything to do with what's happening now, other than, I just feel bad for JJ McCarthy somehow being dragged into this ludicrous story that will not go away. So that's about all I got to say about that. Let's move on to Matt in Wisconsin. What is the standard deviation on a Caleb Banks PFF grade prediction? I'm not sure what you mean by the standard deviation. Like, do you mean like how different, like how much above average would that be? Is that what you mean? Like, would he be a standard deviation above an average player? Or do you mean like how far could it go from here? Like, what's the range? Could it go like one standard deviation ahead? Like, I'm not sure I fully understand. So maybe you can clarify that. But in terms of like the PFF grade prediction, it's really just based on what decent rookies have looked like by PFF grade recently. Like there's a handful of guys who are rookies. We can look at this. We can pull this up. Why not? Why not take a look at this right now while we're talking about it? So I can explain. So I can have the exact numbers instead of trying to just remember them. So here's what I was looking at is the drafted defensive tackles from last year and how they performed. We'll give that a minute to load here. So this is how they performed last year. And if we look at, well, Walter Nolan only played 169 snaps. So if we take him out of the equation, Mason Graham was the only guy who graded above 65. So you have Jamari Caldwell of the Chargers, Tyleik Williams of Detroit, actually Ty Ingram Dawkins. I mean, isn't that crazy? Ty Ingram Dawkins had the 5th highest grade. Deion Walker is a similar player to Caleb Banks, like really raw. He had a 57 PFF grade. Derek Harmon, who was very hyped up. I really liked him coming out. His grade was only 53. Now, average is 60. So, mathematically, have someone else explain to you how that works. But an average type of season would be 60. So these are kind of hovering around average, give a play here or there. Kenneth Grant had a really tough season. Darius Alexander had a really tough season. So did TJ Sanders, Alfred Collins, CJ West. You heard a lot about those guys coming out, and they had really, really brutal seasons. So I was basing it on the number of snaps where I went with 480. Most of the rookies were in the range. There's 10 rookies that were between 416, well, I guess 9 and 550 snaps. So that was my thought there. If we go back to 2024 and we look at that draft class, how well they performed in their rookie year, like this was kind of my thinking is I went into the numbers a little bit hard of, well, this is how these guys usually perform. And we go back to 2024, Tavondre Sweat had really good numbers, but aside from him, it was mostly guys grading somewhere between. Michael Hall Jr. didn't play a lot, but had a good grade. This wasn't a great class, but even like Byron Murphy, this tells you how hard it is. Byron Murphy is now a star, but in his rookie year, I played 457 snaps and had a 57.8 PFF grade. Braden Fisk, who had a ton of quarterback pressures as a rookie and played a lot, still only had a 57.1 grade. Still was kind of an average player for his position. So I hope that kind of makes sense of what I'm talking about with the PFF grades, which is that we shouldn't expect him to get grades like Aaron Donald or, whatever, J.J. Watt or Akeem Hicks or Kenny Clark in their primes or something, that we should have kind of like normal expectations versus other defensive tackles in the league. Like if he plays like average, and I've said this before, like average is good. If he plays like average, then that should be really good for their defense. Mr. Mayor, have you seen the Sam Darnold interview on Bustin' the Boys? Class act as always, but he did seem to point the finger at Kwesi Adofo-Mensah for him leaving the Vikings. Yeah, I mean, I saw what he said was that he understood what the general manager was getting at. And, well, that would have been mostly his dealings, right? It would have been his agent and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah that would have been responsible. And I saw the segment where they tried to guess what the number was that they offered Sam Darnold. And, he kind of smiled at, and said, yeah, it's pretty good. You're good at your job. And I think it was around $27 million. Now, he ultimately only got, 33 per year from the Seattle Seahawks. But the only option for the Vikings there was to franchise tag him because he was not coming back unless they were going to make a big commitment. And that is the front office's job, to negotiate the contract and to be involved with him and his agent on their potential decision. But I will always go back to the common sense part of this, which is if the head coach said, we have to extend, we have to franchise tag Sam Darnold, I need him as my quarterback. In no world is Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who, by the way, was getting steamrolled on other decisions by other coaches. If that's what was happening, then you can't tell me that he was going to say, no, Kevin, I'm sorry, buddy. You drafted JJ. He's your problem. That just is totally irrational. That is, I don't know. We'll never know what happened truly behind the scenes, and everybody's going to tell a different story. But if you're wanting to convince me in any way with any comments from anybody that the head coach was totally absolved, not involved at all, I think where Kevin O'Connell was probably the most right was that if you were going to go with JJ, you needed a real backup quarterback, not Sam Howell. And to Howell's credit, he had started an entire season in the NFL before, but man, that guy was bad. You needed like a Joe Flacco or a Tyrod Taylor or somebody who had been a real quarterback before that you could put in if it wasn't working. And they ended up with Carson Wentz, though, who is a real quarterback. And if you compare how Wentz played versus all of their backups, it was about the same. So everybody's always going to try to spin this one way or the other. They got the bad man. He's gone. No, I mean, the front office under Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah was mostly getting the groceries for the person making the grocery list. So who's making the grocery list when it came to Sam Darnold? But you're right, though. He was a class act in that interview. I had, no expectation of him just, I won the Super Bowl, Vikings, screw you. But, he did a good job of kind of dancing around that entire thing. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, Mr. Mayor. That's right. He said that Kwesi was set on pursuing the rookie contract advantage, and that's why they didn't make a competitive offer. And that's absolutely right. Like, that was the whole plan from the front office perspective when Kwesi got there, was to eventually draft the quarterback and have the rookie contract advantage. And that's a major part of the reason why they did it. There's no doubt about it. They didn't hide that. I mean, they said that. But at the same time, if the head coach who had just won Coach of the Year and was Sam Darnold's closest guy, he's in the headset against the Packers saying, I love you, Sam. Let's go win this game. All that sort of stuff. I mean, that photo of him, him being carried in the locker room and Kevin O'Connell sort of giving the look, if you remember that. I mean, that guy had nothing to do with the decision. Just, hey, you go stand in the corner and coach, and right? I mean, do we really believe that? Everybody's responsible, because you know who else is responsible? The Wilfs are responsible too. I mean, they're at the very top, and in every NFL city except for Green Bay, because they don't have real owners, they have deluded weirdos who own the team, sort of. I'm just kidding, Packers fans. But no, they are deluded weirdos, but I think that's why we like the Green Bay thing. Anyway, the point is that 31 other cities have owners that are extremely involved in the decision of what to do at quarterback. And that's why I say everyone is responsible. Like, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah may have had the plan, and the Wilfs may have liked the plan that didn't involve spending $41 million in cash on Sam Darnold. But again, the guy in the organization who was getting the huge contract extension, who was getting Coach of the Year, who just won 14 games, had elevated himself into the top-notch coaches in the NFL with this guy at quarterback. And you're telling me that, no, I don't know, had nothing to do with it. Like, probably not, right? Probably not. Beavers says, I'm thinking at least 250 if he stays healthy, 400 snaps for Caleb Banks. Yeah, I mean, I think 400 is the range of most of the rookies that we see in the NFL at the defensive tackle position. And given that he's got the foot issue, this is a healthy season. And I'm leaning a little bit here on the Vikings doctors and the whole foot thing working out. If it doesn't, then it'll be a massive disappointment if he has further issues with the foot. I always go into every offseason saying, like, hey, we're going to make predictions and talk about this as if people are healthy, because how the heck am I supposed to know if they're not? Like, if they're going to have somebody fall on it. Last year, Blake Cashman is running after Caleb Williams and then just like pulls the hammy. I don't know. Like, you can't see that stuff coming. But as long as Caleb Banks is healthy, then 400 seems about right. 400 to 500 range for him. So he gets his feet wet. He can make an impact. But they're also not saying, hey, rookie, I know you didn't have an OTAs and a mini camp and a typical offseason to get your body in shape, but why don't you just go play 700 snaps? That would be a lot to ask. Yeah, I mean, that might be true, Taslios. I mean, Sam Darnold is not going to come out and say anything that is really of substance about how he really feels about this sort of thing, because he never has. He has never trashed the Vikings. He has never trashed the Jets. He has never trashed the Carolina Panthers. And even just saying that he understood what the plan was for the Vikings is about the most controversial thing he's ever said. And even that, there's nothing really there. That was the plan. It was what they did. Of course. He just said, I understood it. But you're right. I mean, Kevin O'Connell was telling teams to sign Sam Darnold and was positive about him. And yeah, I mean, right. Like I guess he told Seattle, but I'm sure that he told other teams, like he was, behind Sam Darnold. But also it's hard to believe for me that if he had said, I need Sam as my quarterback for 2025, that the Wilfs and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah would have said, no, don't talk to us anymore. We're handling this. Not after the season that he had just had. Julian, have you ever heard anything about O'Connell? Well, no, I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, the same sort of thing. Okay, Matt, what do you think the floor and the ceiling is for his grade? Okay, for Caleb Banks. Is that what you meant by the kind of standard deviation? I think that the floor for Caleb Banks's grade is probably maybe like a 50. I mean, if he has a lot of negative plays, because the way that the grading system works is it does have a lot of weight of your really good plays and your really bad plays. And so you could have a decent season, but if you have 3 or 4 really tough plays in a game where maybe somebody just gets him off the snap, like NFL offensive linemen, their get off is very, very quick and they know the snap count. You don't. In college, if you're that big and someone gets, has a good get off on you, you can just like grab them. But in the NFL, they will move you. Even if you weigh 330 pounds, a lot of guards in the NFL will just move you. And so I could see Banks having a good season, and mainly the season we described, but having too many of those negative plays. And that's probably why a lot of those rookies don't have outstanding PFF grades, is that they do just get worked sometimes, a lot more than veteran pros and the best guys in the NFL do. They get caught off guard, they get out leveraged, and they don't really know yet how to control their body in a way that will resolve that. Because if you want to get like super granular about this, there is a technique that you'll see and you can watch for it, defensive tackles, where they will kind of use, like, they'll go down to one knee and just like use the leverage that way. I don't know exactly how it works or why they do it, but you see that like they'll be trying to get turned by an offensive lineman and they'll just like go down to one knee. It's kind of a little trick of the trade to not let the offensive lineman turn you. And like does a rookie player know all of the tricks of the trade yet in their first season? No. So a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm beat. And then now what do I do? Well, the really good players know what to do. But in terms of a ceiling, I mean, I could see the number of high-end plays being high enough to grade in the 70s and be a really good player. I think that there's going to be enough negative plays where that doesn't happen, but the ceiling certainly is, especially if it's set up the right way for him to be out there in advantageous situations. Axton, seeing how Caleb Banks was just seen jet skiing. I'm guessing 5 sacks and 400 snaps, provided he's healthy. I don't know if jet skiing is dangerous to the foot. Is it dangerous? I mean, I guess it's somewhat dangerous. I don't think of it as like super, like he wasn't jumping over the Grand Canyon in a flaming motorcycle. I don't think. I don't know how much jet skiing impacts the foot anyway, but yeah, 5 sacks and 400 snaps. That sounds about right. Like he is a guy that has a quickness level to him, and what also benefits his potential sack number is that Brian Flores is so good with deception that we just see this team get a lot of sacks. I mean, last year, I think it was like 45, 47. They were among the better teams in the league in sacks, even though their leader had 7. So, I mean, if maybe I'm getting these numbers wrong, guessing them, but they didn't have like somebody get 20 sacks, and they still ended up in the top 10 in the NFL in sacks. So you see Eric Wilson running through, getting, sacks and stuff like that. Now, it could be an opportunity thing where Banks might play really well, but he's moving bodies more than getting sacks. I just think he'll have enough reps where he just gets off really quickly, throws somebody, they just lose leverage, can't handle him, and then bam, you've got a sack 5 times in a season. Like that could definitely happen. Yes, Mr. Mayor, the floor is always someone getting hurt, but that's the floor for everybody. Joker says your Caleb Banks prediction is obviously one of the 50% wrong ones. That season would be a best case scenario. Yeah, I mean, I think the best case scenario is a little bit higher than that on Caleb Banks. It could be, 6 sacks. If things go really well, it could be 550 snaps. If things go really well, putting a ceiling higher than that would be a lot for Banks. But I can also see where the skepticism would be. I think in this prediction, I tried to be as reasonable as possible and not say, yeah, Caleb Banks, 10 sacks right away. But when I show you those numbers of what rookie defensive tackles have done recently, it's fair to say, hey, that would be a good situation for Caleb Banks, and then he could build on it. But is it going to be wrong? Like, I have no idea. I just think that his physical prowess is to the point, and the circumstances with the coaching are to the point where it will be favorable for him to have a solid first season in the NFL. That if you were throwing him on a different team, if he was asked to play for the New York Jets, would we think that it was going to be like this? I don't know, because you're kind of on your own at that point. But here, you're going to have a lot of help with a rotation, with situations that Brian Flores feels strongly about. And I think that gives him a good chance. But if you're a skeptic of him coming out in the draft, then I guess you would say, yeah, like it's probably not going to be the best season right away, because even in the best case scenario for those skeptics in the draft would be that he just becomes a little bit of like a high or low player sometimes and is not really that reliable. And that's happened with guys his size before in the league. So I guess we'll see. But I've just moved so far beyond the draft like that I don't even think about it in those terms anymore. I think about it in he's a Viking and this is kind of what it's going to look like, not what I thought of him in the draft. You're thinking less than 300 snaps. I just don't see how that's possible if he's healthy. Maybe 1 sack while you're very down on Caleb Banks. I am not that down on Caleb Banks. I think that he's going to get to the backfield a handful of times, and I think that he's going to be out there quite a bit. It's not going to be 50 snaps a game though, but I think that you're probably a little low. Taslios, FanDuel question of the day, top 3 defense. He can't get the media love if the team loses. No, that's true. I mean, if they have a top 3 defense and they have the, 13th best offense in the league, they're in the playoffs, and Caleb Banks would be talked about a lot. But that's a great point, though, that when it comes to defensive rookie of the year, any award really, it often goes along with, well, was this person on a winning team? Offensive rookie of the year is just, were you a quarterback who played reasonably well? But defensive, it's totally up in the air. I think that it's a long shot in part because he would need a big sack number. He would have to have probably 8 sacks to get into that defensive player of the year contention. And somebody like Ruben Bain or David Bailey, those guys have every opportunity in the world to rush the passer every play and get those sacks. If Caleb Banks is properly turning linemen to help Andrew Van Ginkel get to the backfield, I don't think you're going to have too many national writers being like, hey, did you see the leverage that he got on that play that created the sack? It's usually kind of a box score thing. Jim, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate you, man. Thank you. Says prediction number 12 is brilliant. Exactly how I feel about the interior defensive line will rotate. They will split time fairly evenly. I think number 12 was the Caleb Banks one, by the way. And fairly evenly. This will be the best move the Vikings have made since trading for Jared Allen. Wow, Jim, you are very high on this defensive line. Just in general, like how could the defensive line perform this way in terms of the rotation? I think mixing and matching a lot of Levi Drake Rodriguez into the mix, Jalen Redmond, like those four guys, and then Ty Ingram Dawkins, like you really have five that right now we could say can do very different things. That's what I like about this D-line. What I don't like is it's got basically no experience at all. I mean, it's Jalen Redmond has one season of really playing in the NFL. Levi Drake Rodriguez, a half a year. Ty Ingram Dawkins, kind of a third of a year, and nothing for the other two. But when you look at their skill sets, Ingram Dawkins has quickness to him. He's undersized, but is fast and athletic. And then Levi Drake Rodriguez is just a lot of man, like a very broad-chested, super strong guy that is not going to get sacks and pressures, but can hold people in place, kind of Jonathan Bullard style. And then, you know what Dominique Orange is as a nose tackle, and Caleb Banks is more of a defensive end, 5 technique, the 3-4-5 technique than he is a pure defensive tackle. So you have a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. I think it might be a little aggressive since the best move the Vikings have made since trading, I assume you mean for Jared Allen. I think the best move they made was drafting Justin Jefferson. That would probably be the one. Or you could say signing Sam Darnold, at least for 1 year. Let's see. Yeah. Taslios, the Addison prediction will only happen if McCarthy starts. Otherwise, it's too high. Oh, that's interesting because as I was reading what you said, I was thinking that you were going to say it's too low. The average Jordan Addison season has been pretty good. 789 yards is maybe a lot, but I'm thinking that he will get deep targets from Kyler Murray and be downfield a little bit more. I don't think that Addison is ever going to be just like a check down guy and an underneath wide receiver. 57 catches, I think, is not aiming for the stars for me. But you think that it's going to be, it would only be higher if it was McCarthy. That's kind of interesting because the way I think of it is, if McCarthy is their starter, they're going to have an incredibly low volume offense. I mean, this is last year, his best performance. They threw 24 passes, and they threw 24 passes per game when he was in, which only projects to 400 something. I mean, I think they would do it the same way if he won the job. If Murray got hurt or if he was really struggling and they didn't like him and whatever, they just decide, all right, we're going to go with McCarthy. I don't think that changes how they play offense. I think they would go back to leaning on defense, leaning on the run game, low volume, and it would end up with Addison not getting a million catches anyway. I think the only chance for high volume is if it's Kyler Murray. And yes, he leans a lot on his wide receiver one, but if he ends up in a lot of shootouts or something, like Murray has this tendency to turn the ball over sometimes. His interception rate is good, but it's definitely not great. So he can make mistakes. He does fumble when he's scrambling. So if you have turnovers and you're playing in these, back and forth type of games, the defense could be more flawed. You might need more passing. But I'm thinking that Addison has a good year that is not revolutionary. It doesn't completely change our opinion on him. That's kind of how I was looking at it. Axton says, seems like a fair assessment of Banks, except for all the negative Nellies who are always assuming doom and gloom. What's funny about the Vikings and their entire history is that there's a lot of things that have gone right for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, many, many things. John Randall becoming a superstar pass rusher at 260 pounds out of nowhere, right? Things like that. Adam Thielen showing up, Minneapolis Miracle, Miracle at the Met, Tommy Kramer, like a lot of things have gone well for the Vikings over the years. It's just not the big thing, which is to get the franchise quarterback. And when it has even been going well, like Dante Culpepper, then it comes to a horrendous end. So I fully understand why people are doom and gloom, but that doesn't mean doom and gloom about every player. With Banks, he's going to get a chance to play a lot. And we're going to find out pretty quickly where he's at. And if he's only playing 15 snaps a game, through the first 8 weeks, I think you start to question that for sure. But I think he'll get more than that. I think they'll kind of just work their way through some of the ups and downs. Tassios, KOC in the quarterback competition would indicate zero chance that McCarthy will start. By the way, over at purpleinsider.football, make sure you go check that out. I wrote today my story with Sage Rosenfels and Brad Johnson about quarterback competitions, what it's really like to be in a quarterback competition. And the biggest takeaway that I had from those two guys, I won't spoil the entire article. Again, purpleinsider.football, go check it out. The biggest takeaway that I had was how much Sage respected that his coaching staff when he was in this quarterback competition in 2005 with Nick Saban as his coach and Jason Garrett as his quarterback coach, was just how fair the coaching staff handled it. That they treated them like professionals. They treated them like men. They were fair. They took the best performer. If we're going to have a quarterback competition, then we're going to take the guy that performs the best. And that's what they did. And then he also talked about when he was with Brad Childress that he didn't feel like it was fair. He felt like it was very slanted in one direction. And what Brad Johnson said really stuck with me, that he talked about how it's a distraction for everybody. That, guys go home to their wives and they're talking about, well, they might be this guy, it might be that guy. And he said, nothing is settled in training camp until you know who the quarterback really is. So I kind of took out of that. I mean, Brad's such a nice guy who's great to talk with. But what I took out of that was kind of a message of like, don't let this go on too long. Like, pick a date, figure it out, name your quarterback, let's go play football. Because if you waver, he said that he thinks the message to the team from Kevin O'Connell and how it's being done is really important. And, the locker room likes JJ McCarthy a lot, I think. And if they don't feel like, one guy's getting a fair shake and the other guy is kind of just all sort of set up for him, they feel like it's a fake quarterback competition, then they're going to sense that. They're going to see through something like that if it's really just sort of for show. And then players are going to start asking, well, why are we doing this if it's not real? Then we're just wasting Kyler Murray reps, which, not to put words in his mouth, but kind of seemed like how he felt maybe during minicamp and OTAs. So it's a delicate thing, the quarterback competition, and we'll see how it really ends up playing out. Joker, I guess Caleb Banks must have really physically impressed you in person to make you forget he's not very good at football. Come on, Joker. In person, yeah, I mean, he's very big in person, but also, and look, I'm the one that talked about this on draft night about how risky this is with Caleb Banks. But I'm not predicting him to right away come into the NFL and get 15 sacks. I'm predicting him to have an average season by PFF standards and to get a solid number of snaps relative to what his peers got last year as rookies, and to make the occasional splash play, but also probably have plays where it's, he just gets got in the NFL too. So I don't think it was particularly bold there. Mr. Mayor, $18 million would make Addison the 25th highest paid wide receiver right now. That seems a little high for wide receiver 2, but probably worth it if we feel like if we're on track to win next year. And that's how they could approach it, is like, where are they at as a franchise? We talked about trade rumors, if you will, with the June, July level rumor, not like it's about to happen, but someone, who's dialed in is talking about it. If they get to a position where they feel like, he's not really worth what we want to pay him. He's really, stuck on the idea that he's a wide receiver 1. He wants wide receiver 1 money. That's where a trade could come into play. And I did think about making that as a prediction, but I also think, well, if you've got him on the 5th-year option, you could just play it out. You could play all the way through, and there might be some holdout. There might be some whatever, that goes on, but that's his contract. He's got no leverage, and wasn't, let's see, George Pickens, what did he get? Franchise tagged Pickens this year, right? Because he was a 2nd-round draft pick, and he's just going to play on it. And I mean, it's a heck of a lot of money to mess with if you're not coming to training camp or whatever, trying to force the team's hand. It is a lot to pay, but also he is a good wide receiver too. I mean, it's kind of ballpark for what you'd expect for a wide receiver 2 per year. Now, it doesn't give you a ton of flexibility, which I think would be the issue and why you don't want to have guys play on the 5th-year option is because you can't really do a lot with that. You can't, extend it. You can't like shove money under the rug for the salary cap. Like you got to pay $18 million on the salary cap. But I also think like that sounds about right. You have a bunch of receivers who are on rookie contracts. So you can't say, well, he's the 25th best receiver, 25th paid, because it doesn't match up perfectly. But I think we would agree that Addison, when he's playing at a Jordan Addison level that we expect, top 30 type of receiver in the league. And you're right. If you are planning to win and you've got a veteran quarterback, if they keep Kyler, you want to have him have all his weapons and then make a decision later down the road. If they're doing a total rebuild thing, then there's another decision to be made there. Bob, our 3rd round gunner, Ty Felton. Give him some time, Bob. Give him some time. He had 1 year as the last pick in the 3rd round. I think that we're going to see more of Ty Felton this year. That's the point. I did the same thing with Dallas Turner, where I was like, give him time, folks. Give him time. He's behind 2 great players. And also, this team does not necessarily believe in rushing guys out there. Like they have been pretty okay with developing some players at more toward the top of the draft, like Dallas Turner and Ty Felton. Donovan Jackson got out there, obviously to start right away. He was drafted to start, and Jordan Addison did because he was completely ready to do that. Now they didn't draft a lot of players and they didn't have the most patience with some of the later round guys. But they've talked about this as a staff with wide receivers. We've seen it with KJ Osborne. We've seen it with Jalen Naylor. And on the defensive side, we've seen it with Dallas Turner, like that they are going to take their time before just throwing those guys into the mix. And when was Felton supposed to play? I mean, they had their 3 starting wide receivers basically after week 3, and they had traded for Thielen thinking that he still had something there. I also thought that, by the way, but who knows if there was a more accurate quarterback or whatever, how it would have played out. Mr. Mayor, what is it about Caleb Banks that makes everyone who sees him rave about his physical freakishness? Not having met him, 6'6", 327 pounds seems like normal for a defensive lineman, but people go wild over him. Let me show you that on Mock Draftable, if I can get it to come up here. Mock Draftable does charts of percentiles for different things like height and weight and 40 times, stuff like that. So let me show you this. Can we see that? So here is Caleb Banks on paper, how he measures against other defensive tackles in height, weight, wingspan, arm length, hand size, and then 10-yard split, 40-yard dash, vertical jump, and broad jump. And if you're watching this, what you're seeing is a crazy chart that it shows that he pops off of it with his size. 6'6" and 327 pounds is huge. So 6'6" is in the 98th percentile. 327 pounds is in the 89th. His wingspan of 85 3/4 is 98th percentile. Arm length 94th. Hand size 94th at almost 11-inch hands. And then his 40 time is in the 60th percentile. And broad jump has actually been one of the things that translates the most to explosiveness. That makes sense, right? Like, what are your actual twitch muscles? What can you do with your body? And he is in the 92nd percentile. So 92nd percentile for a guy who's also in the 98th percentile of being huge. That's why. I think that pretty clearly explains why people go crazy over Caleb Banks' size. It really is nuts, because it's not just height and weight. 327 is still pretty big. Most guys, I mean, Harrison Phillips was like 310. He was a big guy. And though the hands and the arms are truly insane. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of why. Joker, best quartet in the NFL with Ty Felton. Sure. Yeah. What was prediction 14? Let me look back. Prediction 14 was, Juwan Jennings. Okay. Because Tassilios was saying that was fair. Okay. Yeah, I think it's fair. Totally by prediction 13, the offensive line is going to be good. Very high on Blake Brandel. I mean, I think with offensive line, and we talk about that development, that this is something that we see all the time in the NFL where a guy is a backup. He's drafted at one position, kind of kicks around as a backup for a while, and then he gets his chance and he's good. The ceiling on that is not, it's not Jeff Christie maybe, or Matt Burke. It's not some of the better centers that we've ever seen at the position for the Minnesota Vikings. Mick Tingelhoff, it's probably not him, but is it somebody who could perform like Joe Berger? I would say yes. I mean, I think that somebody like Joe Berger is a great type to compare Blake Brandel. Berger was obviously smaller than Brandel is, but Berger had been a backup and, bounced around and then got his chance, played pretty well. And I think we'll see the same for Brandel. It's unlikely to be freakish, but the thing about Brandel that is different is when somebody who is Caleb Banks' size lines up across from Brandel, it's not a huge advantage like it was with Garrett Bradbury for so many years, where Bradbury would be fine for 5 weeks in a row and we wouldn't even really notice him that much. And then here comes Akeem Hicks, and it's like, the PFF grades are going to go from 60s and 70s to 0. And that would happen sometimes because he just literally was not a big enough person. He was too small to handle those players. And he wasn't a psycho like Jason Kelsey, who was able to deal with his lack of size in lots of different ways. He's a fine center and was there for a lot of great moments, but was just too small. Brandel is not going to deal with that issue because he is a offensive tackle size guy. And I've even heard this from Searles at times where, Jeremiah has mentioned to me that because he represents offensive linemen, that he wants some of his people to cross train because tackle in the NFL is mostly first round draft picks. So can you play across the line? And Brandel's had years to figure that out. And I think the IQ part is going to be good. So that might be the boldest. None of you have been really against that or been as skeptical as much as the offensive line has been a bugaboo for this team at times. Joker says Brandel talked about how he practiced snapping to his wife this offseason. If she could catch the snap. Did he say that? If she could catch the snap, then Kyler Murray can. Yeah, well, you got to practice somehow. There is, who was it that I saw this from? But long snappers will snap to their wives sometimes, right? There's somebody's got to get back there and catch it. So if you don't have a lady who's willing to catch a long snap or a center snap, then what are you doing? That's love, man. That is the truest of love. Taslios, Smith will be back by week 1. So this is I have no idea. You have no idea. No one has any idea. But the reason I think that it's going to take into the season if he's going to come back is just how long the season is. And at the end of last year, he was playing great, but that man was battered. I mean, at 20-something years old, and, Harrison and I aren't that different in age at this point, and I know this for sure. At 20-something years old, things roll off your back, you recover pretty quickly. At, pushing, 37, that it doesn't happen like that. It takes a lot more recovery every single year that you're in the NFL. And I think that for somebody like him, it would be perfect to have a half a season. In fact, that probably helped him last year because he dealt with a health issue early in the year, came back and was still playing strong in the second half of the season. I mean, I think that gives him a better chance to play at a Harrison Smith-like level. So that's why I went with it. Son of Beaver says if we're winning, he's back week 5. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I could see something like that. Wins the bye week, after the bye week, potentially. It might also depend on how they're playing at that position, because if they are 7-2 or something, they're playing great, but their Achilles heel is the safety spot that, maybe Jay Ward isn't playing that well, or Metellus got hurt or something like that. And it's man, we need you. Then you could see him coming back. Guard guy, who are the top 15 guards you predict Donovan Jackson to be graded similarly to? Well, we can look at that guard guy. We can look at the top guards in the league for last year. I feel like you're daring me to name. Can you name all 15 of the top guards last season off the top of your head? I'm good, but I don't know if I'm that good. But to make a comparison, let's get him a comparison. And I know the funny name here is Ed Ingram. I did see that Ed Ingram said that recently the best thing that happened to him was the Vikings trading him. But also, what a weird season for Ed Ingram. He had a good overall grade by PFF and was 15th best in the league, but his pass blocking grade was, still looking for it. Where are you? 51st out of 61. So he was a dominant run blocker, but still same kind of Ed Ingram. So anyway, let's take a look here. So it's so funny that when I say top 15, Ed Ingram is the guy, but Tyler Booker for Dallas, he was also a top draft pick. What a good draft for guards. He was a 72 last year, the 13th best guard in the league. Jonah Jackson, who you guys are familiar with, played with Detroit and the Rams and with Chicago last year, 71. So, I mean, if you're above 70, you're in the top 20. Joel Bitonio last year, he just retired but was still good. David Edwards got a big contract. These are the guys who are in that range, top 25. Landon Dickerson was there. Ezra Cleveland, as we see. Dalton Reisner. Yes, that's right. You could build an entire team of top 25 graded guards by PFF of former Vikings. So there's that. And maybe that's the reason that you have a new offensive line coach. I don't know. It did seem like... I also think that one of the reasons that the Vikings guards have not been graded very well is, number one, when Kirk Cousins was playing, he doesn't escape the pocket. So historically, I even went back to looking when he had good guards in Washington, they still would give up a ton of pressures because he's right there. So teams attack the middle, the guards get hit by it. But I also think that O'Connell's system, and this is where there might need to be some adjustment, or where Kyler Murray could just make this better. It allows for a lot of waiting for routes to develop and having to throw it at the very last second. So that means pressures. That means people, getting through to the quarterback. Wow. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for the super chat, dude. Wow. That's a huge super chat. You could become a subscriber to purpleinsider.football for that kind of super chat. So thank you so much. Never a requirement to ask questions on the show, but always greatly appreciated for the brand. Every super chat is a meal on the road when I'm covering games. So thank you very much for that. Axton, very concerned about the depth of the offensive line. What if Brandel gets hurt? Who takes his place? Well, the idea would be, I think that Michael Juergens would be ready to go. Last year, Juergens was not by any means a star, or he would be starting right now, but he is a high IQ player. I think he's one of those that's not quite big enough to be a starter. He kind of reminds me of like an Austin Schlottman, who eventually turned into a starter, but it took a long time. He just really isn't physically big enough to handle, those players that we were describing, the Caleb Banks types. But I think he did a good job when he came in from the mental standpoint, and he is a smart guy. So Juergens would be that guy. I also think too, and this is something that I researched last year with Ryan Kelly. It was one of my big concerns with Ryan Kelly was if you lose your center, there are no backup centers, literally none in the league. No one has one. Not a single team has a backup center that they feel good about. If you lose your center, you're in a heck of a lot of trouble. So you should always factor injury history pretty heavily. And that seems like a thing that they kind of missed as they were putting in Ryan Kelly, not having Blake Brandel take any reps in practice that we saw during training camp to be ready to play center, just hoping Juergens would be able to do it. There's just not many. But in terms of the depth, where it's most important is tackle. I think you can fill in guards. You could kind of cover for guards. The Vikings have done that for years with their guard position, but I think they did a great job at tackle. Ryan Vandemark played pretty darn well for the Bills as a backup tackle. And then Caleb Tiernan, 3rd round draft pick. He's got some potential. He's a really good athlete. So I think that they actually have the best depth that they have had in a while, but it depends on that guard spot. Like, do you have to get another guard in free agency? Do you develop Joe Huber for another year, who was quite good for them last year in training camp and preseason? But the poor guy, the only game he got to play was with a backup center in, and also Justin School had to come in halfway through that game. So Joe Huber, you're an undrafted free agent. Your first game ever is against Cleveland, and there's backups on either side of you who you've never played with before. Not the best. So it might be him. It might be Henry Bird. They might sign someone. It might be Walter Rouse. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, guard is where I would be concerned right now with the depth, but tackle is quite good. Mr. Mayor, think that Harrison Smith has good football left in him, but if he comes back, I hope it's around week 10 like you predicted. I don't want to see him break down and go out on a low note. Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why I predicted it that way, because it's kind of what I want, like what I'd like to see from Harrison Smith. And, what I've just, as you guys have, when you watch someone play with such a prolific career for such a long time, how it ends, you want it to end really well. And that's why if he doesn't come back, and I agree with you that he could still play last year, but if he doesn't come back, I would be completely okay with that because, well, one, guys should go out on their own terms, but it was great at the end that he had a great second half of the season. He was picking off passes. He was playing mind games with quarterbacks. He was making plays, blitzing, and great. That's what you want to see from Harrison Smith. But I also think he could do it again because raw speed isn't really what makes Harrison Smith great. So if he's even reasonably as fast as he was last year, which is fast enough, then he could still impact the game so much if he's out there. But yeah, I think you get to that age, how many safeties have ever played to that age? It's not that many. I think Troy Polamalu retired at like 34. And Ed Reed played for a while, but he was a pure deep safety. So, have I ever texted KOC? I have not. I have not texted KOC. I'm not an insider. It's not what I do. If I had to about something, I suppose that I would, but I'm not an insider. I talk to people all the time about football, such is my life. And because I'm in this, I'm always talking to people who are involved in the league. That's kind of the joke. And I hear things and stuff, but it's not like the function of Purple Insider to break news like that. So I'm not texting people with the Vikings nonstop being like, tell me what's going on with this situation, whatever. And most situations kind of play themselves out anyway. I try to hear as much as I can, but I spend much more time trying to do the analysis part with the data, with calling people to do interviews, talking to players after practice to learn from them about football, learn from them about what's going on, than I am looking for transactions to tell you about. So it's just not my role. And I like doing this so much better because the cool thing about Purple Insider is that I just get to do it the way I want to do it. If someone was paying me $800,000 a year to get as much scoopage as I could, well, then you know what? I would probably do that instead. But my favorite part of this is learning from NFL people, talking to Sage Rosenfels and Brad Johnson. It's studying the data, just like a great question earlier about why is Caleb Banks' size fawned over so much? Well, I've got the answer because I've looked at the data and stuff. That's how I like to spend my time. And then bring that to you guys rather than spend it all day trying to text people in the NFL. Son of Beavers, I feel like it's not the first time. Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know what you mean. Chris, you know what? So you got pulled over for being on the phone. I didn't know, is it every state? I truly, when I got pulled over in Minnesota, I was like, oh, is that illegal here? I didn't even know. So now I know. But I did not try to leverage. Sir, do you know that I have a popular podcast? Are you aware of that? There are literally dozens of people who listen. I did not try to do that. Mr. Mayor, how's talking to players or coaches off the record work? Does it actually happen much? How do you keep track of what someone told you months and weeks ago? Well, what people have told me months and weeks ago, you either take a note or you just remember it because it's kind of the only thing I do. It's kind of like if you ask the doctor, how do you know which one of them syringes to use? I don't know. You just if you're a doctor, that's what you do all day long. So you just sort of know it. I talk about the Vikings, write about the Vikings, think about the Vikings, talk to people about the Vikings all day long. So if someone tells me, for example, that Kyler Murray, and this is a real off the record thing that I was told, which is why I can't say who told to me, but that Kyler Murray is incredibly motivated to prove that the whole narrative about him is wrong and that he is through the roof about wanting to make this work with the Vikings. you don't forget that. I don't just like, oh, well, I don't know, just whatever. It's like, no, that's going to stick with you. So a lot of stuff, if something that someone tells you off the record really sticks, then you're just going to remember it because it's part of the daily thought process about the team. Or if you really want to take a note, you put it in my phone or something. But in terms of like talking to people off the record, I mean, we're in the locker room, you chat with people sometimes, or, at practice, after practice, or whatever it might be. Sometimes you get to know certain people in the league and then you message with them, hey, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? That kind of thing. I mean, it's really like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. You kind of get to know people. And then once you have a relationship with them, then you might have a conversation that you wouldn't have if you didn't know them well, which is why being in the locker room is really helpful. So then you might be chatting, like I was chatting with a player last year, kind of in between press conferences about, it wasn't anything super, like every conversation off the record is not like, do you guys know this crazy thing is going on? Like a lot of times it's just sort of chatting, it's like, oh yeah, I kind of see it that way. Or, oh, I get what you're saying. Or, hey, this play that you guys were ripping apart, well, here's what really happened. So I'm like, oh, okay. It's kind of stuff like that. I mean, the way that you could sound way more dramatic is if you're like, a player told me that they are frustrated as a defense because of what, like that. If you want, you can do that, but most of the time it's not really like that. Or it's, Brendan Sorsby, just here's a good example. Brendan Sorsby, this whole thing happens with him. And I text somebody that I know just in the league and ask off the record, like, I'm not quoting you officially. What's the deal with this guy? Like, could someone going to pick him? And then I get a response of like, well, yeah, whatever. Cause the person knows I'm not going to put out the information. So, what do I do with off the record information? What I do with it is layer it into my analysis. So sometimes you'll hear me say like, well, I was told this, or, I did hear that this was kind of the case, or sometimes I won't, in fact, probably 90% of the time, I won't say anything at all like that. Because I'm not trying to get aggregated. I'm not trying to like make it sound like I'm an NFL insider. That's not really what I do here. What I try to do mainly, number one, is facilitate really fun conversations with you guys. That's number one. And number two is to do more work than what anyone would ever expect on the analytics side and interview side with people, and just bring as much, insight as I possibly can. Like, that's why you're here. You're not here for me to be like, I've heard this. That's not what I do. There are people who do it. I'm not the one. So usually I layer it into the analysis. So if I'm talking about Brendan Sorsby, I might mention like, oh yeah, I heard that maybe a 3rd round pick could happen. But most of the time I'll just talk about it, and that will be influencing my opinions. That's what usually happens, is it influences my opinions. So sometimes when there's some opinion that I have, and then it turns out that it happens, and you guys will be like, wow, you nailed that one. And I'll be like, well, I had help, but yes, that's what I'm trying to do here. So I hope that makes sense. It's two very different roles though, what I'm doing versus what an NFL insider is doing. So Taslios, from what I read, it was KOC was okay with letting Sam go get a contract because he thought that Kwesi was going to secure Daniel Jones. Yeah, I mean, I think that was like out there. Even in a Kwesi press conference, I think he talked about maybe expecting that Daniel Jones would like Minnesota so much that he would just come back, and then he got a better situation in Indianapolis. But yeah, I think that Taslios, that's the best way to present what happened, was that O'Connell felt like, as so many people did, he was not alone in this, that what had happened in the playoff game, they just didn't have a strong enough roster to beat the Rams. He looked at the Rams roster and went, we don't have enough guard play. We don't have enough defensive tackle play. We don't have a good enough running situation. We just need a lot more, and we could coach up the quarterback, but we'll bring back Daniel Jones just in case. And then when Daniel Jones left, it seemed like there was no other option behind him. And that's where you end up with trading for Sam Howell, who they did turn around and get a better draft pick for, I think. But then you get Howell in the building and it's just a mess. It's just a disaster. That guy is not an NFL quarterback. And I don't know, like, he had terrible metrics when he started. I don't know how that happened. I really don't. And O'Connell never seemed even the slightest bit enthusiastic about Sam Howell, and he's enthusiastic about every quarterback. When you talk about like the butting of heads and things like that, that's one where you go, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know how that happened. But they end up with Carson Wentz, who if they had just signed Carson Wentz in March, we would have never questioned it. We would have just been like, oh, Carson Wentz. And he was fine. And if they had been good the rest of the season, those 5 games going 2-3 with your backup, you had every opportunity to be in the playoffs. It wasn't the backup quarterback's fault. Now, if Daniel Jones had been their starting quarterback, people would have hated him and wanted to throw him in the Mississippi River because they were so obsessed with J.J. McCarthy. If the Vikings had let Sam Darnold go and then started Daniel Jones week 1, there would have been riots. No one wanted Daniel Jones here. It's probably the reason he went to Indianapolis, because he was actually wanted. KOC wanted him, but I mean the fans. Like, he was going to get a real opportunity. If he had beaten out J.J. McCarthy in a training camp battle, no one would have been happy about that. I'm pretty sure here on the old show, I would have been like, wait, you let Sam Darnold go for Daniel Jones? What? What are you doing? Just play McCarthy. I would have been in that camp. I would have said, just play McCarthy. My gosh. So, we can rewrite history in a lot of different ways, I guess is the point. Joker pie chart request blame for Packers end of season choking, QB failures, random players making random catastrophic mistakes, overall roster just not being good enough, and coaching mistakes. If you missed the conversation with Bart Winkler, I thought it was a lot of fun. Comment section didn't always love it, but Bart is the funniest and the most fun. So we had a good discussion about the NFC North coaches. And if you listen to that show, he ranted prolifically about Matt LaFleur. So we've got quarterbacks, random players making catastrophic mistakes, overall roster not being good enough, coaching mistakes. Quarterback failures are definitely in there for the Packers. Rodgers did not play well in that game against San Francisco. Rodgers had his opportunities to beat the Tampa Bay Bucks in those 2 MVP years where he probably should have been able to make it. So we can't discount quarterback failures. I would go that's probably 20% of it. If you're talking about recently, like going back to Favre, a lot of it was Favre, just throwing it to the other team. But recently, under Matt LaFleur, QB failures are probably 25. We'll go 25% of it. Jordan Love not being able to close it out the second half of last year. Yeah, let's go 25%. Quarterback's always a big deal. Random players making catastrophic mistakes is also, I think, 25% of it. Yes, the blocked punt is a big deal, but you should have been winning by more anyway. You're at home, it's snowing, you're against Jimmy Garoppolo, who they didn't even want to be their quarterback. Like, come on. Overall roster not being good enough, I think, is because they had Aaron Rodgers win the MVP twice. It's probably less than it is the last 2 years. The last 2 years, that would be more. So it's kind of like 2 different sections of Matt LaFleur's career. So I might go just 25% across the board. I mean, coaching mistakes is a big deal. And last year, blowing a 21-3 lead is always going to be pinned on the coach. But just not being good enough also matters too. So I think that's a cop-out pie chart, but I also think that it's probably the right pie chart, is that the quarterbacks haven't been good enough in those big playoff games. Rodgers was not good enough against Tampa Bay, and he was not good enough against San Francisco. 2 great defenses, but still. And Jordan Love was not very good against the Eagles, and he was not very good against the Bears. So that matters. But a blocked punt, like even the Tampa Bay game, they might have got another shot if there wasn't a holding on the final play. So yeah, they have had quite a catastrophe in the playoffs of late. They're sort of turning into the Vikings. ZG Wags, any thoughts on the Vikings and KOC getting dragged into the Diana Rossini drama? The video's getting made right now questioning her. Aaron Rodgers reporting last offseason. Yeah, I mean, here's what I think about that. There's 2 situations right now that are going on with major reporters or a draft analyst as well, if you've seen that have made a lot of noise. And the one thing that you can't help but wonder is if somebody was doing what they were doing with Diana Rossini, like what was the caliber of information that was going out to the world, right? And with the draft analyst, I mean, if you're doing certain things, and I don't want to make any accusations directly, so if you can look at that story, you can. go find it on the internet. But, when there's a draft analyst potentially starting, fake charity stuff and things like that, like if this is a dishonest person, what is the caliber of their information that's getting put out there? And it's something that I worry about all the time. I mean, you worry about this, what is it called? Like maybe people call it pay for play, or I'm trying to think of what there's like a term for it, but like when somebody is sort of trafficking in information and you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know why it's being put out there. And I think it's actually been a more entertaining game recently, in recent years, to try to figure out why someone is putting a rumor out there. Okay, who is this coming from and why is it out there, right? Just for example, all of a sudden, NFL insiders have sort of said, well, JJ McCarthy looked a lot better at minicamp. I didn't see any of those NFL insiders actually out there other than Tom Pelissero. And Pelissero, I know, is, always got really good Vikings information. But when you have a lot of people who are kind of connected, that is it spun in a certain way, the information that you're getting? Is there a reason why it's being put out there and presented in the way that it is? And you always kind of question that in my seat, where we're trying to get to the truth. Like this job for me is like trying to understand it better, trying to have the right opinion, trying to make the right prediction. That's what I'm doing. And it's very confusing. And I think it's very confusing for fans. And when you have information that's going out, into the world and can have an impact on things, you'd like it to be done with integrity. And, certainly that was not the case with Diana Rossini. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing that has become a huge story. I mean, KOC being dragged into it, as I said, it's not uncommon for an NFL insider to text an NFL head coach. Like that's the job, is to try to get that information, to try to put out as much as you can. But sometimes I wonder about, are certain things written and said because you're trying to, facilitate more of a relationship, do a favor for somebody, whatever it might be, or is it, done because you're trying to get to the bottom of the truth, right? And that's why I always respected growing up, like your Ed Werders and your Chris Mortensons and John Claytons, because you really felt like these guys took it very seriously to get to the truth about stuff and tell the right story of what was really going on. But now with so much emphasis on clicks and subscriptions and engagement and all that stuff, there's just a lot of reward for anything you got. Just throw it out there, regardless of what the repercussions are. And I, am concerned about that. But when it comes to the questioning of the reporting last year, it was questionable. I mean, it did feel like it was slanted in a certain way, and why that was, I'm not sure. But, we talked about that a lot last summer, and it's something that is going to be a part of the NFL landscape going forward, regardless of, who's been fired or not. Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate that. I really do. But that's why I don't really want to be part of that. Like I try to, in a lot of ways, try to have less relationships with people, like enough to, be able to tell you guys the right story, but also don't want to ever be turning my opinions to try to make somebody else happy. Like there are enough people who I've made unhappy over the years that I'm much more comfortable with that than I am with, well, I've got to support this player because so-and-so likes them and they've been telling me information. Like that's a hard world to live in. And I got fired from a play-by-play job one time for being way too honest about how bad the team was. So like, that's just my approach. But again, look, if somebody's going to pay $800,000 to be an NFL insider and get as many texts from coaches as you can get, well, can't blame anybody for doing that. Joker, if you could have controlled Aaron Rodgers like a Madden player, the Packers would have won multiple Super Bowls because the top priority would have been winning, not A-Rod being the hero. That might be true to some extent. I also think that the Aaron Rodgers that was later in his career, I think the mobility started to decline and he became much safer. Even though he's putting up crazy numbers in those few seasons, we saw him just get safer as his career went on. I don't know if he was afraid of interceptions or if he couldn't get on the same page with receivers and he just didn't want to get hit or what it was. But I think that mattered a lot. And when Rodgers also played for flawed teams and may have elevated that happens too. Like if you play for a flawed team, you might be elevating them and then it collapses eventually because you don't have a strong enough team. That's truly now in hindsight, the story of Sam Darnold, which is Darnold elevated the Vikings in 2024 to a 14-win team. They were not a 14-win team roster. They were a good roster. They were a roster of a team that gets knocked out of the playoffs in the first year, or in the first round, but they had such great performances from their quarterback that they won more games than they should have throughout the regular season. Even the Arizona game, they didn't play well and Sam Darnold leads them back, or even the Falcons game, their defense isn't playing that great against Kirk. He was getting completions, moving the ball, Bijan's running it, and he just gets outperformed by Sam Darnold. That happened a lot that season. By the way, FanDuel question of the day, just if you missed it, Caleb Banks is plus 7,500 to win Defensive Player of the Year. Where would the Vikings rank as a defense if he were to have a rookie, not Defensive Player of the Year, but Defensive Rookie of the Year, plus 7,500. I don't know what I said, but plus 7,500 Defensive Rookie of the Year. If he were to do that, where would the Vikings defense rank? Mr. Mayor, do we really think it's likely that Banks is actually good, though, even if he's healthy? Is he really so much better athletically than the competition, considering his production wasn't that great? Yeah, I mean, the production thing is an issue for me. As you guys know, if you watch the draft coverage, and I know you did, Mr. Mayor, that just historically speaking, when defensive tackles have not graded super well in college and not been super productive in college, they have not lived up to their expectations. Doesn't mean that they haven't played in the league. They just have not lived up to their draft status. I mean, mostly like across the board over the last 10 years, because I did that study before the draft, and that was what kind of made me a little leery about Caleb Banks. But also, like, it isn't, even though he's called boom or bust, there is totally a spectrum for this player where if he is just a 62 PFF graded guy who gets 4 sacks and 37 pressures and plays 500 snaps, that's a pretty good player for you. I mean, somebody who can dominate a certain matchup, somebody who can, move a body when you need to create a lane, whose quickness is good enough to where he can loop around somebody or run a stunt inside with somebody. Him and Jalen Redmond stunting would be kind of something to watch. It's complicated, right? It doesn't mean he's either going to have 10 sacks or be the worst player we've ever seen, which is kind of how boom or bust is talked about. But, I don't think that it's necessarily the best description of Caleb Banks, because he also could be a below average player that ends up playing a lot and gives you a lot of snaps. Like there's a wide range of outcomes is probably how we should talk about it rather than boom or bust. But the boom part is that you could see him being one of the better players in the league physically. And the bust part is that if the production does not carry over or does not ever show up that wasn't there in college, then he's just going to be a guy out there who stands out when he walks off the bus. So, I mean, nobody really knows how it's going to work out. But in terms of can you just physically dominate people in the NFL, most people can't. Somebody with that explosiveness, with that height, with that length, with that strength, I mean, he's got the potential to, and that's why they decided to draft him. And I do think that you have to kind of lean a little bit in a certain direction when you have so many players who have overachieved what their expectations are with Brian Flores. Jalen Redmond, we did not think that Jalen Redmond was going to be any kind of star. And he is, I think, like a semi-star in the league. And this is a guy who came from the UFL. I mean, my goodness. So I think we have to give some benefit of the doubt there. But, is it likely that he's good? I mean, the 18th overall pick, defensive tackle. What are the odds without great production, but freakish, body? I mean, I don't know, 50-50. No one really knows till he actually gets out there, but I think it does. I think it makes it more likely that he could be an average quality role player because he's physically freakish like that. Like if you draft a guy who is undersized and who is underweight, just for example, if Jordan Addison wasn't an absolute technician and a great ball tracker, he just wouldn't even play Because he's so small, they wouldn't even put him on the field. Like there's very few average receivers or below average receivers running at around 165 pounds. This doesn't happen very much. You either got to be great with that, or you're just not even going to be in the conversation. It's not like you generally find roles for guys like that, other than like wide receiver 4. It's not like he's just going to be an average guy. He's got to be really good if he's going to be that size. If you are Caleb Banks' size, you could be a little disappointing and still make a big impact. We've seen a lot of players who are physical freaks who do that. So I think that's part of the thinking. Axton came up with a pie chart question. All right. Let's see. The way the math wouldn't give you a headache. Who will be the Vikings starting quarterback in 2027? Kyler Murray, JJ McCarthy, someone traded from another team, a rookie that they drafted in next year's draft. So I am going to go. This is a great pie chart question. Thank you, Axton. And that does make it fairly straightforward and easy. Some of you who give me 5 or 6 options, sometimes, I'm like, I don't have the calculator app open. I will go with Kyler Murray being a 30% chance to be the starting quarterback next year, because if he plays well, gets him to the playoffs, has the redemption arc, it's not that hard to see. And I think everybody can see it. Whether it's going to happen or not, no one knows, but everyone can see it. The guy's talented enough. He's got the weapons. He's got an offensive coach who recently has had a great passing game, not last year, and the improved offensive line, the improved, potentially, if it's healthy, the improved run game, potentially. Like, you could see it all coming together and saying, all right, well, let's extend him for a couple of years. 30%, I'll go with that. JJ McCarthy, I'm at about 10%. I still think it's a great thing if that happens. If he wins the job, he plays awesome. They win 11 games. They have found their franchise quarterback. It's in the range of outcomes, but likely though, after last year, and you know who I was reminded of? Because, I mentioned this to you, what old games I'm watching, and I've been poking through the 2009 season, but not Vikings, because I've already watched that season, but other games around 2009. And I ran into one between the Browns and the Bengals. And I looked up a comparison of Brady Quinn's first season and versus JJ McCarthy's. It's not terribly different, honestly. And Brady Quinn had that one season as a starter, and that was it. So, based on the numbers, most quarterbacks who perform like that don't get that many chances. EJ Manuel, Christian Ponder, you just don't get that many shots if you perform like that. He could be different, but that's the reality. So I'm going to go 10%. It's a great thing if it happens, but I don't think it's super likely. Traded from another team. I'll also throw in signed from another team just to include Baker Mayfield. So we're at 40%. I will say that is a fairly likely outcome. I will go another 20% there, maybe 30, 60, 70. Yeah, I'll go 30% there. Yeah, Mac Jones is definitely an option. 30% there. And then is it more likely someone from the outside than Kyler Murray? It may be more likely, actually, because of the price and the fact that Murray can leave even if the Vikings want him. I'm going to make an adjustment. I'll go 25% Kyler Murray, 10% JJ McCarthy, so we're up to 35, and I will go 35% someone from another team, so we're up to 70, and then 30% for a quarterback. Feel free to toss your own in there. Hopefully I got the math right. Mr. Mayor, if you had to guess, what do you think the odds that Teddy would still be the Vikings quarterback if he never got hurt? Still to this day? I don't know, because they would have gone through that whole transition. I think that Teddy was good enough to be a very successful starter on his rookie contract. No one knows what was going to happen with Teddy. He was ascending. And remember, they barely had the versions of Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen that those guys turned into. So if Teddy, rather than having Mike Wallace and Charles Johnson, ended up with Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs peak versions of themselves in 2017, Case Keenum was turned into a superstar that year. And I think that even if you're a skeptic of the Teddy narrative, which some people are, he's better than Case Keenum. He's still better than Case Keenum. He's still a backup quarterback in the NFL. So is Keenum, I guess. But the point being that, I think that he was ascending. The receiving core was absolutely ascending from being pretty atrocious for a number of years there. And there were two superstars around the corner in Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. 2017 defense wouldn't have been any different. In fact, it could have been better because they had to pay Sam Bradford money to be there. So maybe it could have even been better if Teddy was still on his rookie contract. But was Teddy the type of quarterback that over long term could have thrived in the pass happy era, which was very short, but it was from 2020 to 2022 where quarterbacks went crazy statistically? I think there would have been some disappointment for Teddy there because he doesn't have the raw skill to be throwing for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns and the big numbers that quarterbacks were putting up. Also, they would have gone through the roster transition with him. Kirk was a better quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater, probably, like from a passing perspective. Teddy was a better playmaker, better runner, but I don't know if that would have evened the scales for 2020 and 2021. They still would have ended up going through that whole thing no matter what, because rosters age out. I think that might have been where it would have been a change, but if they had won in 2017 and Teddy had kind of kept the train on the tracks and Mike Zimmer was still the coach and he kept Zimmer from going insane, like kind of Kirk made him crazy, maybe things play out differently. Maybe he still would have been the quarterback 10 years later. I think that's how they viewed him. Within the team, that's how they viewed him when he was going into that 2016 season. And I will always wonder what it would have looked like with Teddy in 2017. Beaver's best friend, what's the first mandatory day of practice in July? 28th. Then it's a couple days later that fans are invited. But I believe the 28th is the first day they're actually out there. Mr. Mayor, if you had to guess, you just reminded me, I need to get in my credential. Wow, I didn't even think about that. Need to get that in. If you had to guess, what are the odds that, yeah, okay, I answered that question. Let's see. Dave, okay, Mama says buying Bo Richter stock. I like it. I want to see it. I mean, I was just talking about, let me show you this. I don't know if they have them here. If it's just, do they have it here? That's relative athletic score, which always melts my computer. Let me see if I can get you the Bo Richter Pro Day results. Because people are always shocked when they find out that Bo Richter had this phenomenal pro day. Yeah, he ran a 4.56 40, bench 24 reps, and had a 10-foot vertical. I mean, he's like a really, well, we'll get to that later. He is a really, really good athlete. And I think that at very least, we're going to see some of that for him getting on the field. He's been really good on special teams. They have been comfortable playing guys who thrived on special teams and then worked their way into a role. The open competition there, I think probably ends. I predicted it ends with Leonard Floyd being here, but I wouldn't be shocked if somebody, Tyler Batty, Bo Richter, Chaz Chambliss, someone just arrives and they trust them and they want to play them. Yeah, I know, Dave, I know what standard deviation means. I just didn't know exactly what it meant in terms of like in comparison to my projection, like what he meant by comparison to my projection with Caleb Banks. Yeah, thanks again, Mike, for the huge super chat. Appreciate that. Joker, let's see. Oh, that's funny. Oh, okay. So Blake Brandel did not say which quarterback because of the competition, but she was critiquing his snap. Look, man, if you don't have a lady who's going to get out there and take your snaps, then that's not somebody you want to be with for the rest of your life. Jim says, I think both Banks and Big Citrus are going to be the proverbial bad man on the D-line. Both of them have a lot of reasons to like them physically. Both of them, based on their college performance, have some questions about them. Dominique Orange, maybe because he was used so much, maybe because he got so much attention after his big, junior year, that his numbers went down a little bit. But I mean, both guys are really in for like out of the frying pan into the fire. I think they're going to have to play a lot and they're going to have to play big roles as rookies right away. Otherwise, I'm not sure what exactly you end up doing at the defensive tackle position. So that's one of the things that will make camp so fascinating once the pads come on, is to watch that every day. we're all going to be watching the quarterback competition, but I'm also going to be keeping my eye on, like, how far along are these guys? Are they ready? Are they getting first team reps, or are the first team reps going to kind of veteran players? They brought in Isaiah Loudermilk, Eric Johnson. Like, both of those guys have played in the NFL before. Johnson's played quite a bit. Are they going to be ahead of some of these other guys who they want to bring along slowly? Or is it, yo, you're the starter, we drafted you? Tasselios, did we ever learn what Harrison Smith's health issue was? I just think with that, like, when they say like a personal issue, I'm just not going to like try to dig too deep into that. I'm just going to kind of leave that at what it is. If somebody's hurt their ankle, like, that's a very common football thing, but if they don't want it out there, what happened to them from a different, like, health perspective, then I'm just going to respect the privacy on that one. Son of Beavers, Ethan Pockich is about the only center left that would be okay to start. And I think he had an injury. Is that right? There's none. There really aren't any. When you try to go looking for backup centers, they were lucky when they found Austin Schlottman. I mean, and he was pretty good, but there's very few backup centers. Purple Insider is not an insider. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a purveyor of the scoop. That's what it is. But you're right. Well, the inside refers to inside the building, because Purple Insider is inside the building every day, and during camp outside of the building at practice. The all offensive line of guys that the Vikings let go: Ed Ingram, Garrett Bradbury, Ezra Cleveland, Vidarian Lowe, Cam Robinson. Where does that line rank in the NFL? Does it crack the top 20? I don't think it cracks the top 20. Cam Robinson was not a very good Viking. He was a decent Jaguar, but he struggled with the Vikings, as you'd kind of expect for somebody who didn't play here for half the season. Vidarian Lowe's not really a starter. The Ingram, Bradbury, Ezra Cleveland thing, didn't that happen? Wasn't that 2022? And it wasn't great. So no, I don't think so. I think that's probably a bottom 5 to 7 offensive line. Speaking of which, I'm going to have Brandon Thorne on the show this week to talk about offensive line. Bring in Will Hernandez. I don't know where he's at either from a health perspective. Will Manny be on the show soon? Of course. But Manny's also, it's summertime. We kind of bug Manny more during the season. But of course. What's the name of the podcast? Yeah, you guys are funny. I just mean that I'm not like an insider in the way that that my main job is to get like rumors and then share them. Like, I'm not that person. Mr. Mayor, was Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah the only GM to ever fleece Howie Roseman in a trade? I don't know, but you're right that getting something from Sam Howell, which would have been awesome if they, it worked out fine. It was not Carson Wentz's fault what happened last year. It was definitely not Carson Wentz's fault because, if you look, JJ McCarthy was cleared to play after 4 weeks of Carson Wentz. So if McCarthy had come back against the Chargers when he was cleared to play and Wentz had gone 2-2 as a starter, that could have saved the season. We would have looked at that pretty different. It ended so horribly that, it's like, Carson Wentz, it didn't work out. But his first 4 games as a backup quarterback, if you're going to tell me that there were a lot of other backup quarterbacks in the league that could have given them 4 better games, 2-2 is the expectation of always kind of the best you can ever expect from backup quarterbacks. Quid pro quo is what I was referring to. Yeah. What's everyone's thoughts on Dylan Thieneman? I think Dylan Thieneman's going to be a good player. But are you referring to questionable information that was shared by insiders where they guaranteed certain guys would be picked by the Vikings like Dylan Thieneman? Yeah. There is that. I think he'll be a good player. I don't know that he could be a huge impact superstar, but I think he will be good. The Bears secondary is really fascinating because they moved on from a bunch of guys after they led the league in interceptions, which is kind of unusual. Joker, it's hard to tell if nervous vibes from the end of Packers losses stem more from the quarterbacks or the coaching. I don't know if it's that or if it's just that the team was flawed and Matt LaFleur looks nervous. I mean, could that be a part of it? But then, the decision to not go for it at the end zone and kick a field goal in 2021, I mean, that was not good. So I think some of his in-game management, it's where if you have a shortcoming as a coach, it will kind of get, and this is like Andy Reid had to take years to figure out the game management. If you have a shortcoming as a coach, it will just get revealed in the playoffs because you're playing the best teams. Mr. Mayor, do NFL insiders bring any value to the world aside from entertainment when they go on shows? They don't do journalism. They just announce things 5 minutes earlier than official announcements. Well, I think that there are a lot of things that get reported along the way that have been going on inside buildings that are not necessarily the transactional parts that are very telling. That, you have reporters who are working on bigger stories. Seth Wickersham comes to mind of someone who's done bigger reports on here's what was going on between Belichick and Brady. You have a lot of reporters who do good stuff like that on, I kind of pulled out that club out of my bag when Kwesi Adofo-Mensah got fired and dumped the notebook into my article. And like, here's everything that I know that happened, talk to you guys about it extensively. And like, that's what a lot of reporters are doing around the NFL. But what we have is a group of NFL insiders where it seems like a lot of it is rumor, a lot of it is speculation, and it moves the aggregation needle, it moves the click needle. So that's what they want. More information, because that's what we do it all the time on the show, man. If there's a report, we just did it the other day with Jordan Addison, and I try to make it more entertaining than just like, this is happening or whatever. So we talk about this stuff all the time on the show. What's being reported, what's being rumored. Could this happen? Could that happen? And I think that's all part of entertainment. I don't think it's necessarily harmful. I think what is harmful is the quid pro quo situations where it's like, okay, I want you to say this person was it Bill Simmons that said that someone offered him like a bunch of money to say, this was years ago, obviously, that someone offered him a bunch of money to say that a certain coach was the next great NFL coach or something, a certain assistant. I mean, things like that. When you worry about stuff like that, where it's like, oh, this guy is rising on draft boards. And you're like, is that true? Or is that an agent sort of pushing you to say that? Like, you worry about that stuff because accuracy to me is important. But we try to do our best at sifting through it. That's the kind of the best we can do. But yeah, you're right about a lot of the stuff that is sort of coming as announcements anyway, and we just would have got it later. Mama Googled Dylan Thieneman, and all the news coming out of camp is good news about him. While it is a mini camp, I think he's going to be a good player. If they had drafted Dylan Thieneman, I would have said, okay, like that's all right. I think the ceiling on what that player can really bring to you is less than what a great defensive tackle can bring to you, though. Thank you. We need a pie chart. I have tried to stay out of the drama. Sometimes I do not. Sometimes I have to play in the mud. Mr. Mayor, if Thieneman turns into a star, we'll truly look like stubborn idiots going against consensus because we didn't want to look like we were going chalk. Well, that's not why they did it. They did it for exactly what I just said. They did it because if you draft a free safety in the first round, I mean, the guy has to be Ed Reed in order for that to be a good decision. He has to be a real superstar because that's the least impactful position on the field is free safety. It's the one that the Vikings have rotated for 10, 12 years next to Harrison Smith. It's the most replaceable by the money that they get. I mean, when you see a good free safeties getting $6 million in free agency, you can get them anywhere. So you need to have that guy be a megastar. If Dylan Thieneman becomes a megastar, yes, then we could criticize them. But I don't think that they did it because it was consensus. I think they truly believed. They sent their defensive line coach to Florida. They spent a ton of time with Caleb Banks. You have Brian Flores involved in this. I think it's because they saw the physical traits of Caleb Banks and said, this is a top 10 talent in this draft that we can get at 18th. And it was more of a value proposition for them than anything else. I also wonder if some other players had dropped if they would have taken someone else. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. Joker, Banks would exceed my expectations if he had a year like Jerry Tillery in 2024. with 467 snaps, 0 sacks, 28 tackles, 3 quarterback hits, and a 58 PFF grade. Well, I think that someone like Jerry Tillery, he was not at all doing a job to get in the backfield. He was really just I'm going to hit people and hold on to them and allow the linebackers and safeties to blitz a lot. So I think that Banks can get more sacks. I think he can get more quarterback pressures, more TFLs, because it's going to be built into his game to get to the backfield. When you have a role like that, like Jerry Tillery, you don't get too many negative plays either. There's a lot of a lot of 0 plays where you would just grade them as a 0. I think Caleb Banks will have more of both, more big plays and more down plays. Aaron, did we ever get your thoughts on the LaMelo trade? Dane Moore is a good friend of mine. Dane Moore NBA podcast. Make sure you listen to that. All things LaMelo. Dane is awesome. So he would be the guy to go to for that. For me, I look at it as I understand the big swing. And I think that as long as Anthony Edwards in today's NBA, as long as Anthony Edwards is on your team, your sole goal as a general manager, decision maker has to be, how can I do whatever it takes this offseason to get him the closest possible to winning a championship, even if it's risky, even if it goes along. This is, it's very Ramsey. Someone asked this, like, are the Rams this might've been in the written newsletter. Like, are the Wolves the Rams? Yes, they really are. And Matthew Stafford is Anthony Edwards. It's like, as long as Matthew Stafford's an MVP caliber quarterback, they trade for Myles Garrett. Is it the most practical trade in the world? Maybe not. The way they've done his salary, his situation is like, oh my gosh, that's a time bomb that's going to blow up on them years from now. But whatever, man, like, it's all in. The way that we just saw Jaylen Brown move today, we've seen all sorts of trades. LeBron wants to go to Minnesota, definitely. But like, all these things, they move so fast in the NBA that you have to do whatever you possibly can to win a championship. And I think that's what LaMelo is. If Naz Reid's a great player, but he doesn't move the needle the same way that one of the best passers and exciting players in the league does. So that's kind of how I think of it. It's just it's a very reactionary and kind of desperate world in the NBA, and the NFL is becoming more like that. Have I tried the all-time build a player? I have not. I've just been messing around with the quarterback. My gosh. I'll have to try that. Is that on the same website, or is that something else? Thank you, Eric, for watching from New Mexico. That's awesome. Yeah, Mama. Right. Bo Richter went crazy on his pro day. He's a great athlete, man. Mr. Mayor, I'll never knock Wentz for what happened in 2025. He was starting quarterback for all the best quarterback games of the years and used the weapons on track to put up normal numbers. No, I mean, Carson Wentz, if he doesn't play that 5th game, but even though he did, 2-3 does not sink your season. If they had beat the Atlanta Falcons like they should have, if they had been reasonably competitive in some other games like Green Bay and come out with a win there, if they had, covered a kick, but also had normal quarterback play against the Bears, they could have beat the Ravens too. The Ravens weren't that great that day. I mean, there's all sorts of opportunity that the Vikings still had to go to the playoffs, even with Carson Wentz going 2-3. So I would always give him that credit for sure. Guard guy, the most replaceable position, is confirmed not to be guard. Okay, well, I think there's some bias there from you, guard guy. Do you guys want to try to build a quarterback? So I'm glad that we could do 5 more predictions. Tomorrow, though, it's going to be 10. So make sure that 7:30, I'm going to start the show Central Time tomorrow. So we're going to do 10 predictions. Watching from New Jersey, 15. Jay Mulls, 15 minutes from where the Diana Rossini incident, unfortunately. Well, don't talk on the phone because the cops are out there, and shout out to the gentleman who pulled her over and is a Vikings fan. Hopefully we have you watching and listening and appreciate your service. Anyway, so let's, why don't we build a quarterback? So I did it the other night. I like ending the show this way. I've done some guess. Maybe I'll do tomorrow. We'll do guess the Viking player. You guys were really good at that the other day. So maybe we'll do something like that, but let's give it a shot. I totally botched it the other day. And I think I ended up with like, oh, I got to the playoffs. Yeah, I got to the playoffs with my build a quarterback. So if you're listening to this for the first time, you don't know what I'm talking about, buildaplayer.com, where you can go through. Oh, this is like, I see. You draft the greats. Okay. You could draft the greats. All right. But I like the way we've been doing it. So you spin a wheel and then you try to build the perfect quarterback based on the players that the wheel lands on. And I built only an 80 quarterback the other day. I did not play it very well. I've had a tough go. So here we go. We're going to try it again. Spin the wheel, and then you pick the skill set, and then it adds up. It gives you a grade, and then you can actually simulate the season with your quarterback on a certain team. So whatever sicko invented this, I love you. All right, we're going to begin with Bryce Young, and I can pick from all of his different skill sets. The arm, the legs, the build, which we will not be picking for Bryce Young, leadership, processing, playmaking and creativity is an A-. I'm going to go with his playmaking and creativity for Bryce Young. We'll start. That's a good place to start. Feel good about that. All right. Our next one is Tommy DeVito. Great. How do I get this out of here? Tommy DeVito. What do we go with for him? He's a C everything. So I learned this the other day that I should wait to use my respin because you can have one time where you spin again. So I should just pick something. Build is the one that I like to go with for the bad quarterback. So I'm going to go with Tommy DeVito's build. Our next quarterback up is Tanner McKee. Well, can we use his size? Is Tanner McKee's size on here? No, his arm, where's his build? Oh my God. I just used build on Tommy DeVito because I thought it was the way that it wouldn't really knock my numbers. And then I get Tanner McKee, this huge quarterback who I could have used as build. So what can we use? Can we go with a B- arm? I don't want to do that. I don't want to go accuracy, pocket presence, vision. Let's have a bad leader. Let's just go C, leadership. I don't know why he's only a C. We're not doing great already again. Las Vegas Raiders, Mason Rudolph. Are we cursed on Build a Player? What am I supposed to do with Mason Rudolph? C+ arms, C legs, C+ processing. All right, let's go a mediocre processor. So far we have Tommy DeVito's build, Mason Rudolph's processing, Tanner McKee's leadership, and Bryce Young's playmaking. What have I done? What have I done, Build a Player? Is this the hard mode? All right. Cowboys, Sam Howell. Okay. We're gonna lose. This is what I would throw the controller if I had one. He's got a B arm, and that's the only thing that's not atrocious. So we're gonna go with Sam Howell's arm. Please give me someone who has accuracy. Joe Burrow. Thank you. Finally, we arrive on a good quarterback. What do we want to use from Burrow? Vision or his pocket presence or accuracy? I'm going to go, I assume S means like elite or all-time great. So I'm just going to go with that. So even though our quarterback has a lot of really bad elements to them, they have Joe Burrow's accuracy. Now we get Jets, Brady Cook. Great. Let's go Brady Cook legs. We're still hoping for an arm. Or no, we've got an arm. What are we still hoping for here? 2 slots remaining. I guess I should have used my extra spin there. Deshaun Watson. We're going to use the respin on Deshaun Watson. Dylan Gabriel. Are you joking? Oh, wait. Oh, I used the... This is awful. I didn't realize it meant respin for the same team. Okay. We're going to have to do this again. This is just awful. Tyson Page. We're resetting this. I'm throwing the controller. That was a joke. But I also didn't know that you had to respin with the same team. We're going to try this again. And you guys are going to enjoy it. I see everybody logging off. Stetson Bennett. We're going to start out with Stetson Bennett. This thing hates me. I can't believe this. We're going to start out with Stetson Bennett's, I don't know, leadership. What else can we get here? The Browns again. I quit. This is just awful. Okay, I'll take Dylan Gabriel's vision. Miami, Cam Miller. What the? Who is Cam Miller? What is going on here? I am literally building undrafted quarterbacks. This is the worst. Let's respin. I don't even know who Cam Miller. Quinn Ewers. All right, I can work with that. Let's go with Quinn Ewers' arm. We don't need a big arm. Can we get Justin Herbert? Anthony Richardson. I just picked someone's arm. We'll go with Anthony Richardson's legs. Thank you. Finally, something good has come up. All right, our next spin is Brandon Allen. We'll go with his build. That's fine. Please give me Justin Herbert. Joe Flacco. All right. We'll go with Joe Flacco's accuracy. That's good. Raiders, Aiden O'Connell's processing, I guess. I'm still only a 79 quarterback, and I get the Jets. Oh, Geno Smith. Of course, I had to pick someone else's arm, and then I get Geno for pocket presence. Okay, my quarterback is going to be bad again, and it's Graham Mertz and his, oh my gosh, a 77 quarterback. Do I have to do this all night? Let's see. Okay, so my quarterback has Quinn Ewers' arm, Anthony Richardson's legs, Brandon Allen's build, Aiden O'Connell's processing, Stetson Bennett's leadership, Dylan Gabriel's vision, Geno Smith's creativity, Joe Flacco's accuracy, and Graham Mertz's pocket presence. Good God. And the team that he will be on is the Rams. Can we still win with the Rams? With this quarterback? The answer is yes. Oh my God, we're winning a bunch of games. 12-5. Can we win in the playoffs? Can the Rams win with this abomination of a quarterback that somehow has Anthony Richardson's legs? Looks like the answer is no, as it's simulating our playoff game and we're killed by the Seahawks. Okay. Mr. Mayor, you are right on, my friend. That, thank you for, I'm tortured by this. I want to build a great quarterback. And I'm sitting here getting Graham Mertz. Those guys I never heard of. It is hard to build a great quarterback. You're right. Yeah, I've built 2 UDFAs. I know. The respins are a gamble. You're right. Sneak peek about the prediction. I'm going to have to go back. I can't. You just have to show up tomorrow. Actually, because I don't remember all of them. My all-time build. Oh, okay. Let's try that. You made an 87 and went to the Jets. You made an 87. Let's do the all-time. That might be fun. Let's try that before I hang it up. Let's go back to this. Let's try the let's try the all-time. Okay. All-time quarterbacks. Here we go. This will make us a good quarterback. We start with Phil Simms. Thank you. Thank you, game. Phil Simms' leadership sounds like a great idea. Accuracy, leadership of Phil Simms, though, all-time great leader. Let's go. We're going to build a great quarterback here, folks, before the night's over. Arizona Cardinals, Kurt Warner, friend of the show. Now we're rolling. Of course, it's only giving us the best quarterbacks for every franchise, but we're going to build a good one. The processing of Kurt Warner, the accuracy, the pocket presence. Okay, let's go processing of Kurt Warner. What a processing freak. Now we're rolling. Falcons, Michael Vick. Oh, this is hard. Let's go legs of Michael Vick. Now we've got ourselves a quarterback, my friends. We've got Vick's legs with Kurt Warner's processing and Phil Simms' leadership, and then we land on Peyton Manning. What do we go with Peyton Manning? Accuracy. Bang. Peyton Manning. We're going to win every game. This is great. No, the Browns. Otto Graham. Of all the Browns quarterbacks, Otto Graham is the one it gives me. Well, let's go with Otto Graham's, let's go with his creativity and playmaking. He was a great playmaker, one of the originals. The Raiders, Rich Gannon, another friend of the show. Let's go, Rich had great vision. Let's go vision for Rich Gannon. Now we got ourselves a great quarterback. This is much easier than Quinn Ewers. Nick Foles. We land on Nick Foles. He had a good arm. We'll go with his build. We'll go with the size of Nick Foles. All right, 49ers, Colin Kaepernick, arm strength. He could really throw it. We'll go with that. And Chiefs, give me Mahomes. Mahomes, beautiful. Pocket presence, A+. We got a 99 quarterback. That was the easiest thing ever. Let's simulate the season with our 99 quarterback. With the Bills, we should not lose any games. Our quarterback has Colin Kaepernick's arm, Michael Vick's legs, Nick Foles' size, Kurt Warner's processing, Phil Simms' leadership, Rich Gannon's vision, Otto Graham's playmaking, Peyton Manning's accuracy, and Patrick Mahomes' pocket presence. If I lose a game, I'm going to be so mad. Yeah, you're not. What? Come on. 13-4. I have Vic's legs with Peyton Manning's accuracy, and I can only go 13-4. We got to win the Super Bowl, though, right? Please. If I lose to the Broncos with Peyton Manning's accuracy and Michael Vick's legs and Kurt Warner's processing, I will go insane. All right, we won our first playoff game. Conference championship. The Bills are a mediocre roster, but, I mean, come on. We're playing the Dolphins. The Dolphins are in the conference championship in this simulation. Okay, can I win a Super Bowl? Now we're on to the Super Bowl. Only a wide right field goal. I won the MVP. I threw for 5,500 yards. Okay. It's the greatest quarterback season ever, and I'm playing the Rams. Oh, you're playing the all-time Rams. Okay, well, that makes sense for why the Dolphins. I thought I was playing. Okay, we won the Super Bowl. There we go. I feel a lot better now. Was it kind of cheap? Yes, it was. Oh, it's all-time teams too. Okay, yeah, that's what threw me off. But yeah, the all-time was much better. Anyway, well, that was a lot of fun. The all-time team. The other one is much more challenging though. Okay, so this was a great time tonight, folks. I'm really glad you could tune in. Again, tomorrow, top 10 predictions. Also, Lindsey Rhodes is going to come on the show and talk about comparing the Vikings core players to the best cores in the NFL roster-wise. Brandon Thorne is going to come up on the show. Also, if you saw Brian Murphy's interview with Kevin Seifert from last week, he's got another one to sit down with Alec Lewis about his career as a reporter. So there's a lot of good stuff to come. Hopefully you had fun watching and listening this evening, and we'll do it again tomorrow, 7:30 Central. Be there. More predictions, or if anything else comes up, we'll talk about that as well. Take care, folks. Football